You know, I was thinking about a lot of different things, a lot of things on my mind. But one thing that I'm thinking about is speculation. There's a couple of things I want to talk about: skepticism, speculation, the whole atheist question, and everything else, and non-believing. Because I've been thinking about this all week. You know, it's just been on my mind about a lot of different things. I'm not an atheist. I mean, even if I didn't believe in God, I still wouldn't be an atheist because to me, I don't think they're the same thing. You know, my belief in God is not really necessarily something that people need to be afraid of because what's important is, and that's one of the funny things, I don't actually go into this big lengthy thing about talking about believing in God all day because it's not that important for me to talk about that on YouTube. I have so many other things like rocks to talk about and other things to talk about and other activities, you know. See, the thing is that things like not believing something, and this is me talking, and other people can weigh in on it. I mean, you know, it's just a matter of discussion. That's all. I was listening to this guy Neil deGrasse Tyson, and what he was saying about agnostic or atheist. You know, he was saying that a lot of people claim that he was an atheist. And I've seen that written so many times. People claim he's an atheist, and he says, you know, I think basically he backed away from that atheism title. I think basically when you listen to him, you kind of get the idea he's not a, quote, believer, if you will. But he's not an atheist. He doesn't, and what he said, everything he said was exactly what I was thinking too. I don't like to label myself as any kind of an ist. You know, I'm not a theist. I say I believe in God, but that's not the same as being a theist. I accept the proposition that there is a God as a statement of truth. But I'm not claiming it as a scientific fact. So therefore, as long as I'm not claiming it as a scientific fact, I feel personally I don't have to prove anything. And even if I did have to prove it, I would only have to prove it to other scientists. If I want my theory to be accepted, or as a theory, and I want this theory or this ideal or principle to be accepted. It's only then that it becomes a, quote, burden of proof issue. But just simply as my own personal belief, I don't have to prove that to anybody. I really don't. I mean, if I believe that cats think in Russian, I don't have to prove that to anybody. I wouldn't run around claiming it, but, you know, I wouldn't say it. Because I know I would get funny looks, yeah. And since I don't want that, I won't say it. But I may have 100 billion other beliefs. But if I want other people to accept what I'm saying, I know that I have to show and demonstrate that there is some validity to what I'm saying. If I want to prove to you that God exists, I have to show you. But if I simply say I believe in God, I don't have to show anybody anything. So, but I'm not here to talk about that. What I'm thinking about is the non-belief issue. And the thing is that what this guy was saying about, you know, this guy, Neil deGrasse Tyson, everybody always throw his middle name in there. The thing is that I think it's kind of an interesting thing to title atheism or atheist. Because you're known by what you don't believe. You know, you identify yourself by what you don't believe or what you don't do. You don't worship God. You don't go through this process of believing and dedicating and devoting yourself to something. But to me, it's like the example he gave is like, you know, I don't play golf. Is there a name for people who don't play golf? You know, I mean, really, is there a name for people who don't play golf? What about people who don't cook? Now, I happen to cook. I cook things. But what about people who don't cook? Is there a name for that? Just non-cooks, you know? Is there a name for people who don't collect stamps? You know, there is some guy whose username on YouTube is non-stamp collector. But, and I know that people, the whole point of that is, yeah, that's what atheism is. It's just not believe. Yeah, but I'm sorry. You see, this cup doesn't believe in God. It's not a Buddhist either. It doesn't believe in Buddhism or anything else. It doesn't believe anything. This cup doesn't even believe I exist, okay? I mean, we can go there if you want to. It's just a matter of playing with words. It's a word thing. You are known by what you don't believe. You're known by what you don't do. Now, the other thing I want to talk about is the skepticism issue. Being skeptical. I want to talk about David Hume. And something I thought about many, many years ago. And believe me, all these things I actually have thought out for over long periods of time. You know, David Hume might have asked the question, how do you know the sun will rise tomorrow? And people have said, well, yeah, he was expressing that, you know, you have to be skeptical. No, you don't have to be skeptical that the sun will rise tomorrow. I doubt that David Hume was skeptical. I'm skeptical that he was skeptical the sun will rise tomorrow. And from reading what he was saying, his skepticism wasn't really a statement of, I'm skeptical the sun will rise tomorrow. I'm skeptical that, you know, a flame of a candle will be hot, or I'm skeptical that the water will boil when you put it on fire. It wasn't so much a skepticism of that. But when you talk about knowing things, actually knowing something, he expressed a skepticism of our degree of knowing. How far can we know things? If I turn on the stove and I put a pot of water on there, I'm expecting it to boil. I'm not skeptical that it's going to boil. And I would imagine if David Hume were here, he wouldn't be skeptical either. He wouldn't be skeptical it would boil. You know, I don't think he would argue with me if I said, that water's going to boil in the next 10 minutes or the next 5 minutes. He said, yeah, I think so too. You know, I think it's going to boil in the next 10 minutes too. But in both cases, we're not really claiming to know something. We're just simply talking about what we expect to happen. However, if you make a claim that you know it's going to boil, then that's when skepticism kicks in. At least the skepticism he was talking about. Because you can't actually know anything in the future. Even Einstein said this. You can't know future events. However, as William James said, that doesn't necessarily lead you to skepticism. You can still believe. You can still believe that's an option for you. And it's a workable option. And it's a useful option. And it's a pragmatic option. But that's a choice. You can choose to believe that something's going to happen in the future. We do it every day. You know, you start your car, you believe it's going to start. Or you pay on the subway, you know, if you use a card like I do, you expect this thing to let you through. As long as your card is up to date, my card expires a certain day, and after that day it won't work. You expect that to happen. There's nothing wrong with that. You don't know it's going to work. You don't know what's going to happen. But that lack of knowledge isn't something that handicaps you. You don't have to be a skeptic. Skepticism, as I've always thought about, is really a choice. People choose to be skeptical. The way in which some people have put it, though, is like skepticism is something you have no choice. If you don't know, you have to be a skeptic. If you don't know, you have to doubt. No, you don't have to. You choose. Doubting is a choice. It's not an obligation. And that's what I want to say about that. Another thing I was thinking about, I'm just throwing some stuff out here just randomly, about speculation. You know, speculating about things and debating and arguing and going back and forth with people about things doesn't really get you closer to any truth. You know, I was thinking about, the assassination of John F. Kennedy. People are still speculating and arguing and debating as to whether or not, Lee Harvey Oswald was the only one shooting that day. Was he really the killer? People speculate about that. And you know what? How long has it been? Next year in 2013, November 22nd, 2013, it'll be the 50th anniversary of the assassination of John F. Kennedy. To this day, we don't know. We don't know. There's still speculation. And if people speculate for another 50 years, we still won't know. And if they speculate, the only way we're going to know is if we really have some real solid, irrefutable evidence. But you know what? The funny thing is there's always people who claim to have irrefutable evidence. There's so many books out there about the Kennedy assassination. There are lots of books. If you go and search on Google or you go to the library or the bookstore, you'll find lots of books on the Kennedy assassination and lots of speculation. I think the most popular one is, of course, there was a second gunman. Why? Because that one sells books more. If you wrote a book called Lee Harvey Oswald Was the Only Killer, that one, 2 copies might get sold. People generally tend to go in the direction of what sells. In other words, the market dictates what is considered to be true a lot of times. But the point I want to say about speculation is speculation does not get us closer to knowledge. The more you speculate, the more you speculate, and that's all. It doesn't close the gap. It's only when you have evidence, and evidence that can be looked at, tested, you can reason it out, and you can work with it, you get closer to knowing. Knowledge is important. It is important, but I go along with what Einstein said, that imagination is more important than knowledge in our everyday life when it comes to things. You imagine your car is going to start. You kind of believe it's going to start. You have faith, if you want to use that word, or whatever. You have confidence, if you want to use that word. And that's good enough. And if one day you put the key in, like one time I put it in and it didn't start, okay, fine. Of course, just watching some movie, where somebody puts a key in the ignition and of course something else happens, boom, it blows up. That could happen. Unless you happen to be some really, quote, important person, you don't have to really be too concerned about that. Anyway, that's all I have to say. So this video really isn't no big deal. I know that there are people who are atheists and they're going to sort of, and that's okay. I mean, you can express your opinion and say what you think and just give a different angle. But I'd like discussions, to discuss things. Not to fight. I'm not here to fight or argue or even to debate, because we're not going to get close to any truth. But I can just understand other people's view on it. And that's what I always like, to try to understand. Not to try to win an argument or prove a point, but just to understand. That's my point about things. That's all.